The director of photography is not somebody that just picks up the camera and shoots. The director of photography is somebody that works with the director to help create a look for a film.
The way the camera flows through the scene, the angles that you try to pick, you know, movement of the camera, those things are what I'm responsible for. And also the lighting, which is really the most important part of the director of photography's job, is to supervise the lighting on a bigger project. But on a smaller project like this, I actually have to hands-on doing it myself.
Jay, believe it or not, man, I think we might have overdone it.
Oh no, I tend to do that.
It looks beautiful though, man. I mean, you did a wonderful job, but around the edges, could you just cut it back a little bit? Maybe just pull a few leaves off.
Let me see what you're talking about.
Let me see. I'm looking at it. It looks great, but I just want like not in the dead center of it, but around the periphery. I wouldn't mind a few random beams escaping out. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, I'll see that.
So like almost if you had smoke going, you'd see the beams. Because eventually we're gonna have smoke. But
Alrighty.
We spend an awful lot of time and energy in planning and talking about how we were going to take a movie that is essentially two guys in a hole and make it interesting. And I think that that's a big challenge, is how do we make it interesting visually? How do we keep the pacing of it quick? How do we give it some kinetic energy? And so the director of photography and I started talking about lighting schemes, not only lighting for the camera, but for lighting to create a mood. How do you say it?
We look at some other movies to try to get an idea of the style that we're going for. So for Last Bullet, we looked at Platoon and other Vietnam films.
medic! Medic!
And by watching these other movies, we sort of got an idea of this non-motivated jungle light. Light is typically motivated, meaning you know where it's coming from and why it's coming from there, like whether it's the sun or the moon or the lamp that's on the table. But sometimes in some situations you have something called unmotivated light, and usually that's something that's annoying and the audience doesn't accept it and doesn't like it. But in certain situations, like caves and jungles and dark houses and things, they accept it. So we had jungle lights. We just basically set up lights way back in the woods and pointed them at the camera.
Is that fast enough?
That looks great, but it goes up fast and then comes down slower. Yeah.
We did the flares and the distant explosions with tungsten light, which actually looks reddish on film compared to the bluish look of sunlight and HMI lights. We set up two lights that were going to be the distant explosions, and we put something called a dimmer on those. And what a dimmer is a little box with a little dial on it, and you have an operator who can operate the dial to go full power all the way back down to off, and can randomize it to any way in between it. And how fast he turns it is how fast it lights up. And if he turns it slow, it'll of course the light will dim slowly. So we looked at some explosions on other films and saw that what it typically does is the light shows up really quick in the explosion and then slowly dwindles down at about 3 or 4 times the time that it took to blow up. So we just practiced that, and so we would just jam it up real quick and then about 4 times slow down. Then we did a flare idea. Now a flare, if you've ever seen a flare, is a military flare shoots up and has a parachute on it, and the flare kind of fluctuates in its intensity as it slowly drifts down through the trees.
So what this is supposed to simulate, like the flares going up and like slowly coming down, and like the embers, you know, exploding and burning the woods and everything around them, is what it's supposed to simulate.
You can also shake the light by actually literally grabbing the light stand and shaking it, which makes the barn doors flap and gives a certain on and off light stutter type scenario. A second lighting effect we did was using HMIs, which is a kind of light that is blue like the sun. We set those up really high, and we pointed those down at a similar angle down along the set to mimic the moon coming through the trees. We set those lights up behind branches of trees so it could give a dappled effect, which makes it more realistic.
So you have to have lights that create mood, mimic moonlight, and you also have to have lights that allow you to light up your scene so that your camera can be properly exposed. Lighting plays a huge, huge, huge part in creating a look for a film.